The Division 2 has now globally released into territory that Anthem attempted to navigate only a month ago. It feels like it's been so much longer. Now, in Anthem's case, the game was met with frustration, disappointment, and a dire need for more work to be done before the game would be anything close to the expectations set by its fantastic E3 demos. It was in a sorry state, and as such, the community reacted to it accordingly. Now, I was an Anthem fan, just for the record. I really enjoyed my time with the game. I gave it a fairly optimistic review. I felt like it did a lot wrong, but there were things in there that I thought would be really cool in the next couple months as they were worked on more as well. Because Anthem released so recently, I'm going to use it as my primary comparison point for The Division 2 in this video, just to help add some context when needed. So, this game, The Division 2, is going to experience a very different reaction to Anthem because, at long last, we're finally seeing a looter-shooter release that actually feels finished. Much of its launch legacy is going to be that it didn't make every single mistake that other looters seem to make over and over and over again when they come out. The game doesn't have 4-minute load screens every 3 minutes. It doesn't have game-breaking server queues. It certainly doesn't crash often. Its loot system feels functional, and its endgame appears to be pretty much jam-packed with content on day one. This is not something you see every day in this genre, and it's going to set the game on a fantastic trajectory as more free content is released for it throughout the year and in coming years. And still, despite that, I don't think you should hear this news and instantly draw for your wallet and go and buy the game. I really think that The Division 2, despite its polish, despite its craftsmanship, will simply not be a game that everyone ends up liking. And I want to spend a few minutes to explain why. Now, before you get angry in the comments section, this is not me saying, if you like the game, that you're wrong. This is not me saying that The Division 2 is a bad game in any sense of the word. It's just me saying that there is a nuanced picture here that I think is worth discussing a little bit. These are my initial impressions of The Division 2, which feed into my recommendation for whether or not the game is right for you. I'm going to try and keep the video fairly brief. My full review is going to be coming out in a couple days after this one, so for now, let's talk about what The Division 2 gets right. A lot of the things that this game does really well seem incredible in the context of other games and other releases such as Anthem, because those games somehow get them so badly wrong. Let's talk about the loot system, for example. The Division 2 features increasingly rare loot, just as you'd expect in this genre, which correlates to your character's level as you grind from level 1 to level 30. The rarer loot has increased capacity for cool stat rolls, so you might get a few talents that work well together on one piece of gear, enhancing your character's kit, and that also might complement your favorite weapon loadouts, for example, or could enhance your special abilities, which the game calls skills. There are also gear sets in the game, which mean that if you have multiple items from the same manufacturer equipped, you can get several extra bonus abilities and stat boosts added to your character, turning you into an even more powerful force as you fight your way through DC. This is good stuff. Now, if you compare it to Anthem, which right now is suffering from multiple weapon stat controversies, where gear does no damage, damage numbers lie to you, extra gear makes you less powerful, etc., then The Division 2's loot system looks downright phenomenal. It looks amazing. Another example, the game's free roam map. It's significantly improved from the previous game because it feels so much more densely populated. Enemy troops roam around on most streets, and they're frequent enough to feel present, but not so much that you're perpetually fighting people when you're trying to get to your next objective. The game has a variety of random events which take place, as well as the option to replay your missions, do bounties, search for hidden loot caches, which sometimes have kind of really mini puzzles associated with them, or you can jump into the game's PvP if you're in the right district as well. All this makes the game feel very alive, and vastly more so than it did in the previous game. It really has improved here, which is fantastic to see. There's some really cool environmental storytelling throughout the game as well, both in the free roam and also throughout the main missions and side quests. There are little things here and there that I think are quite easy to miss, but when you start digging deeper and you're really paying attention to the world around you as you fight through those missions, you get a massive appreciation for the thought that has gone into the little details of the world. This is all great stuff, right? But now I want to give you some counterpoints for things that maybe aren't so good depending on your gaming preference. First of all, the game has no story. Really, I couldn't tell you a single thing that has happened in the story other than the president getting saved at one point, and that might as well not have even happened because it really didn't feel that consequential. The cutscenes in the game try to make you care about the world around you, but they consistently fail every time, and they feel stupidly generic. I mean, in one cutscene, Christian man, who clearly has a cross on his neck, talks about some Christian stuff and is literally building a cross in front of you.
Good to meet you. Henry Hayes. It's outside those walls, it's perdition. Whatever you're doing out there, we're not feeling it in here.
There's no depth to the character, you don't learn anything about him, I can't even remember the guy's name, he's just there as someone to talk to. And really, that's the root of it. The characters in the game are just vehicles for the features which they are used to kind of humanize. So the vendors, for example, really all you care about is the stuff they're selling, obviously, but there's no reason in the slightest to actually care about the person, which is something that Anthem did do really well. Now, of course, this is a looter shooter. If your focus in this game is the loot grind, this isn't a problem at all. But if you're someone that does want a story, this isn't the game for you, so that's just something worth bearing in mind. The combat in this game is also still very Division, and I think that that's actually going to be the game's biggest hurdle in the long run. If you're a fan of the Division 1, you're going to have a great time, just hands down. If you're familiar with DC and you like the idea of grounded, real-world, concrete-colored cover shooters, then for sure, this game is going to tick your boxes. As someone who is used to playing other looter shooters, someone coming in fresh, who's used to fighting against huge, monstrous gods wielding magical weapons and saving the universe, really living that sci-fi dream, this game is not really going to appeal to you in the same way at all. You spend nearly all your time in this game crouched behind a car, a ledge, or a wall, peeking around to fire off a couple shots, then ducking back to reload, and then peeking out again to fire some more shots. Over and over. It's nowhere near as satisfying as a combat loop such as in Anthem, which has you constantly flying, shooting on the run, dodging, activating combos, and feeling like a wizard wearing an Iron Man suit. You just can't run and gun and have mindless fun in the same carefree way in this game. And again, to come back to that same point I made before, if you like cover shooters, if you're a fan of The Division, this isn't a problem at all. In fact, this is probably exactly what you're hoping for. More deliberate gunfights and a more grounded experience. But for the wider audience who have maybe played a bit of Borderlands, a bit of Diablo, and a bit of Destiny, for example, if you're one of these people and you're weighing up if this is the right game for you, then I'd be careful here, because I don't think that this combat is going to appeal to everyone. This has knock-on effects for the rest of the game. For example, enemies in the game are not monsters, they're not gods, they're not aliens, they're just normal-looking human beings. They shoot guns, they throw grenades, sometimes they have armor, and there's something that never leaves the back of your head as you play, which is that this is just another person in front of you. Yes, they have a few different types of weak spots, for example, depending on what faction they fight for or what weapon they're holding, and sure, sometimes they act in interesting ways, expertly flanking you if you pause to revive a teammate, or firing blindly in your direction if visibility is poor due to bad weather like fog or rain. But they're also still just people, and it never really feels justified for them to be as bullet spongy as they can be, in contrast to how I feel when I'm fighting the monster alien gods of a game like Destiny, which are absolutely bullet spongy, don't get me wrong, but it kind of feels like that's okay, because I'm fighting a god, or I'm fighting a massive alien. It's just a subconscious thing that is kind of hard to get around if you're used to that sort of game. Again, if you like the Division 1, this game is going to make you very happy, because it's just more of the sort of stuff that you had before. But if that sci-fi fantasy is an important feature for you, then you're probably not going to get along with this environment. These knock-on effects then also apply to the end game, obviously, as well, because you've got less flashy effects on your screen, you've got less lens flare, it's just generally less bombastic, and not everyone wants that. But the people that do want it, who want to be immersed in DC's virus-swept streets, fighting other survivors who are just trying to get by like you are, then this game is really going to make you happy. It's such an interesting one because there really is two sides to this coin. It's juxtapositions like this that I've constantly found myself bumping up against as I've played through the game. And I've played so many looters at this point that I think I can confidently say this game is phenomenal in its execution, and it's going to have a very long and healthy life cycle for years to come. One that I'm definitely looking forward to making more content for and playing through as it progresses. But I've seen a lot of people saying that this is the looter to end all looter shooters because of how polished it is on launch, and that this is now the looter that everyone should be jumping to for the next year or something. But I just don't think it's a cookie cutter game like that, and I wanted to make that clear for everyone watching today. It's my job in this video to try and inform you about whether you should buy The Division 2 or not. And weirdly, I'm kind of giving two answers here. If you're one of those Destiny players I mentioned and you're up for something new, then I wholeheartedly recommend you check it out because I think that there's a lot to like in this game. But I'll leave you with this kind of final point. The Division 2 slightly modifies and leans into what The Division 1 did best. And it's a much better game for it because it's zeroed in on its identity. It's really carved out a position in the market that I think a lot of people are going to love. However, if things like no story, slower combat, more deliberate combat where you're taking cover more, you're waiting more, you're not necessarily fighting against crazy sci-fi monsters, if those things sound like problems to you, then maybe hesitate for a bit, wait for some more content to come out like the endgame 8-player raid that's releasing in the coming months after launch, and then make a decision. But don't necessarily jump headfirst into it, expecting it to play like Destiny, or Anthem, or Borderlands, or whatever other game you might be playing right now, because The Division is being very Division in this game, and that isn't for everyone. I, for the most part, personally, am having a good time, and there are a few things that are getting in the way of that I'll talk about in the full review, but for the most part, this game is fantastic, and I'm really glad that Ubisoft have managed to pull off a really smooth launch for it. Fingers crossed these initial impressions help maybe illuminate whether you would be having fun too if you had this game as well, and also helps steer you away if you're the sort of person that wouldn't actually find this fun if you did end up buying it and giving it a try. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I have been Mr. Waffles. I'll be posting my full review in a couple days' time like I've said, so look forward to that, subscribe, and I'll catch you then. Bye for now.